Hi, Love Bug. Welcome to the Naked Yoga Podcast. This podcast is all about incorporating bits and pieces of yogic philosophy and spirituality into your everyday life. I'm your host, Nneka, a graduate student at Columbia University's Spirituality Mind-Body Institute. I'm also a yoga and meditation instructor at a little studio called Core Power Yoga. You may have heard of it. My mission here is to help you nourish your mind, body, and spirit connection. Each podcast episode will begin with a guided meditation, followed by the core of the episode pairing a spiritual concept with science. Lastly, each episode will end with a mindful closure, providing you with actionable steps you can do after listening to deepen your mind, body, and spirit connection. So, without further ado, let's get right into today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am so happy to be here. I have been feeling like I don't know what to do with my evenings anymore now that Love Island is over. If you guys are watching, I am such a huge fan of Serena and Cordell, and I'm so happy that there are winners. But getting back to topic, I thought today we could talk about what makes life worth living. A pretty heavy spiritual concept and not so much into the psychological side of things, but I thought we could have a really nice conversation just on where you are at, kind of in life and how you can kind of stay motivated through the ebbs and flows of life. So with that being said, I thought we could get started with a meditation to just really help us ground down into ourselves, our bodies, and some of our experiences, the good and the bad. So without further ado, let's dive into the meditation. Wherever you are, begin to empty out the air in your lungs with an SH sound. Shh. Nice big inhale in. Sigh it out. Big breath in. And let it go. Inhale. And exhale. Twice more. Inhale. And exhale. Last time. Big breath in. And then let it go. Begin to breathe just like you. Finding the natural rhythm of your breath. Noticing what expands with the inhale and what contracts with the exhale. If you are able to do so, if you feel safe, if it is safe, I invite you to close your eyes or to bring your eyes to a soft gaze. Invitation to place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. I invite you to begin to take a look at your life's path, noticing and appreciating where you are today. And then thinking about where you were last year. How have things changed for you? I invite you to take an even bigger step back and think back to 5 years ago. How would the you of 2019 feel about the you in 2024? I now invite you to think back to 2010. Where were you? Were you in school, working a job, in a romantic partnership? Just taking some time to reflect on that 2010 version of yourself, their hopes, their dreams, and desires. Putting yourself back into that place and then reflecting on where you are now. Would that person be proud, inspired, in awe of your growth, resilience, and strength? Taking some time to find gratitude for all the versions of you that led to this version of you. When you're ready, we'll begin to exit our meditation just as we came in with 5 breaths. When you're ready, SH all the air out. Big inhale in. Let it go with a sigh. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Let it go. Twice more. Inhale. And exhale. Last time, big breath in. And then let it go. Empty, empty, empty. And then return to breathing, just like you. I invite you to take a moment to pause this podcast and journal, reflect, write down any feelings that came up for you, and I will see you guys on the other side. Feeling after that, so I honestly am just feeling so grateful. I also took a moment. Normally I sit down and record these podcasts and do the meditation and journal all in the same sitting, but it's actually been a cool 24 hours. After I journaled, I just wanted to kind of take some moment to revel in the gratitude. And so I did want to share some personal tidbits. So when I thought back to 2019, I was working this corporate job and I was really liking it at the time, but I just didn't have like a purpose in my life. And for a while that was fine because I was happy. I was making more money than I ever had. I was casually dating someone that I really liked. I was traveling everywhere, like visiting my friends all across the country and taking I think it might have been my first solo trip, but just I was traveling a lot and enjoying life. And then when I went back even further to 2010, I was actually still in high school and dreaming about living in New York City and just getting out of my suburban, like Michigan town. So when I look back on both of those versions of me, I am just so proud of the person that I've become. And I hope you have similar feelings. I think in life, when we think about what makes life worth living, a lot of mindfulness is really rooted in being in the present moment. But sometimes it's really good to look back, to look at how far you've come, how much you've accomplished, and just how much growth that you've had in the last, 5 to 10 years. Anyway, with that being said, I do want to transition into our, theme or topic for today's podcast, what makes life worth living? And for me personally, I think when it comes to that, it's really understanding your story, your purpose, and your why in life. Before I go any deeper, I do want to give credit where credit is due. This talk was very much inspired by one of our guest speakers in our summer intensive at Columbia Spirituality Mind Body Institute. Unfortunately, for the life of me, I cannot find the original speaker's name, but I do want you to know that it was inspired by a teacher. And so one of the core elements of what makes life worth living and how we've been here for generations and generations of people to come is understanding your story. Oral history is honestly one of the most impactful histories and ways of transition, upbringing, and human history, if I'm being quite honest. And so really take into account to think about what stories are you telling yourself, and what stories is your psyche kind of rooted in. For me, being African American and Nigerian, I was very much brought up in a Christian religion, a Catholic Christian religion and sometimes Baptist, right? But so stories that I heard over and over and over again growing up was, for God to love the world, that he gave his only begotten son, and whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. That's a story that I can literally say from the top of my head. And also, like Genesis and creation, and these are stories that kind of mold my psyche, right? It's embedded in the patriarchy, if I'm being quite honest. And understanding that while I do identify as a feminist, there are things that come from these stories that I was told from such a young age that influence the way I move through life, and honestly maybe contradictory to the story that I want to tell myself now. So wherever you are in your life's journey, think about the stories that you've heard growing up. These can be stories from religious perspectives, whatever faith tradition your family belongs to, or these can even be familial stories, like stories of your parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles, stories that embody your family's legacy, right? It was funny because I was watching Summer House the other day, and Kyle Cook comes from a family of skiers, right? He tells the story that his great grandmother was an Olympic skier, and so skiing is in their blood, and so that's something that's really important to him, and a story that's been passed down his family from generations to generations, right? These stories, while they are, kind of like fun and dandy, they do really influence the purpose of our lives. Another story I would love to share with you is the American dream, right? The white picket fence, the heterosexual couple, the 2.5 kids, and a dog. These are stories that have been told to us as Americans, that this is what we should want, this is what we should strive for. And as you see right now in real time, those stories are changing. And so our purpose for living is changing. So I do want you to take some time just to reflect on what stories that you have been told growing up that kind of influence what you think derives like value and goodness and purpose in life, that drives you to live within your purpose. And then I also want to invite you to begin to reflect on, what does it mean to be a good person? What morals or values drive you as you push forward in life? Oftentimes, I think we can get a little bit sidetracked, right? We're trying to live these lives and be the best that we can be, but we're getting distracted by these stories that may not be our own. Distracted by the story, for me personally, that you have to work hard in order to make money and to be able to afford, a quality life. Well, I've seen firsthand that that's not necessarily the case, right? Like, we have all these non-ethical billionaires that aren't really working that hard, but are rather exploiting people in order to line their pockets. I don't think Jeff Bezos works hard anymore. I mean, granted, he might have when he was starting the company, but he had a lot of help. And I think we really need to rethink those stories. And so I'm actively trying to deprogram myself from thinking that I have to work super hard and grind all the time. I'm not going to lie, I do get into grind modes. Oftentimes people ask me how I balance school, the podcast, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, and school. Not to mention I was working like 3 jobs for a while. And so for me, letting go of like, I have to work really hard and kind of leaning more into, I need to do things that make me feel alive, right? And so when I'm doing these things, I'm working jobs that I feel like are a little bit more aligned to my purpose. I actually am looking forward to going to work, and I am happy to go to work, and I feel rejuvenated while I'm at work. I loved my internship at the United Nations. I love being a yoga instructor, and I love my graduate school program. And so it was easy for me to kind of work hard because I guess as that story goes, when you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. Yes, I believe that's how that story goes. And so when we're thinking about like what makes life worth living, you really have to take some time to think about what lights you up, what brings you joy. And there also are these stories that like, yeah, it's great to have a job that you quote unquote love, but I don't dream of labor. Or it's impossible to have a job that you love and be able to sustain and make a lifestyle off of that money. And so I think the beautiful thing about social media is that it's really showing us that that is no longer the case. There's plenty of people who are making money, having their own small sustainable businesses and thriving, right? Making their own hours and simply doing things that they love. And so my hope for you is that you found this little talk on what makes life worth living to be inspiring. And I think it's time for us to actually transition into our mindful closure now. So thank you guys so much for listening. I truly love being here and being able to talk to you guys and share just some of the tiniest drops of wisdom that I've collected at the feet of my teachers. And so for you all in our mindful closure, if you want to dive deep into this reflective work, I want you to journal about what is your new story. Forgetting the old and letting go of anything that is self-deprecating or self-doubt or disbelief, and just leaning into what makes life worth living and what is your story of your life. I believe I reflected a little bit to you guys about this, but in 2010, I was a sophomore in high school, or maybe a junior, one of those things. And I was really in love with psychology. I think I was taking AP Psych at the time, and I knew I wanted to be a therapist, but I had this story in my head that therapy was for white people. I had this story in my head that I need to make money and I can't make money doing something that I love. And so it took me quite some time. If you guys don't know personally, I worked several corporate jobs before I came back to psychology. So it took me a while, but I was able to rewrite my story and get back here. So I hope that inspires you to take some aligned action and to make your life a life that is worth living. All right. Love you guys so much. I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Naked Yoga Podcast. My name is Nneka, and if you want more content from me, you can follow me on Instagram or subscribe to my YouTube channel at Nourish Nneka. This is a completely independent podcast. Yes, I write the scripts, record, and edit the podcast all by myself. Therefore, any support you could give, like a like, a share, a comment, maybe leaving a little review on Apple Podcast or wherever you might be listening, would go a very long way and warm my little itty bitty heart. Thank you so much once again for listening, my love bug. I will see you in the next episode.